Good morning, everyone. Lots going on. Yesterday, I showed this video of the two police officers assaulting who I thought was a kid. Actually turns out to be 21-year-old Ocean, and I can't remember his last name. But he's a member of a nice family, a hockey family, well-known family in Calgary. Says Kean Beck says, "This is Ocean, the young lad who had a taser shoved in his face by two incompetent Calgary police officers when skating kids were being interrogated by CPS, Calgary Police Service. He went to support them. He ended up violently assaulted. What he did isn't criminal. It was Canadian. Story coming in the morning." So again, this video is interesting. It's worth your watch. The police call him over and then assault him. And it was an interesting thing. Like, you would think that there would be direction, verbal direction, but I mean, on the video shows such unprofessionalism. It's unbelievable. And I said yesterday I would have had him, or were I him, I would have gone and called my parents. I didn't realize he was 21, right? I thought he was like 15 to 17. I didn't think he was 18 at least. And I actually thought he was younger than 15. So, but the kids who he came over to help were younger. So regardless, but if a police officer's screaming at me to do all of those things and then pulls a taser out, like, the whole situation was very outside of the norm. I would have called a lawyer or something to that effect. I'm pretty sure I would have negotiated with the police to back off, and I'll walk over and I'll take my skates off. But if you touch me, things are going to go poorly for you, ladies. Like, I don't know, a little bit of respect, right? Like, come on. The whole thing could have been handled a lot better. The Calgary police mention, here's Mike McCullen. He says, "Our government likes to repeat the words to keep you safe over and over. This is to keep you safe. Do you feel safe? Do you feel really safe?" The police officers attacking this kid for playing hockey or for coming over to stand up for the hockey playing kids. Ezra Levent says, "I'm impressed with CTV and CTV-M Franklin. It takes a lot of skill to write a lengthy story about a kid who was assaulted, sworn at by police, and had a taser pointed at him without mentioning the assault, the swearing, or the taser. That takes skill. A skilled liar." Yep. Here's Calgary Police. They say, "We've received many questions and concerns about an arrest that occurred earlier this week. Please see the below statement for additional information on the incident." Video is circulating online of a 21-year-old man who was arrested for obstruction of an officer and resisting arrest after allegedly trying to avoid a ticket by refusing to identify himself and not remaining with officers when instructed to do so. It's interesting because the officers, it seems, and they say, by law, a person is required to identify themselves if they're being issued a ticket. Otherwise, they can be charged under the criminal code for obstructing an officer. I think he was saying, "What am I doing wrong?" And then, like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you grabbing me? Don't you have a right to be informed about what's going on?" Instead of being like, well, the whole thing was a mess. The whole interaction was a complete and utter disaster. I'm not going to play it again. Oh, and I figured out what was wrong with my Twitter sound, so sorry about that. And all the sound I was doing, the output was very low, so I apologize. Things should be back to normal now. Okay, moving into China. So that's the end of the hockey story. The Calgary police handled this poorly. I think their statement handles it poorly. I think that they should take responsibility for their poor actions and apologize to the family, etc. But I don't think that's going to happen because we're getting into the next story here. Here's Mike Pompeo, and this is a 2018, this is a 2020 speech to the governors, U.S. state and the China competition, Secretary Pompeo's remarks to the NGA. This is the National Governors Association. And in this, he talks about how China is targeting local leaders right down to school principals. If they've got, he uses the example, and I'll play the example here. He uses the example of a Taiwanese climate expert being canceled because the CCP didn't want the Taiwanese expert being highlighted in the school. Wild, like that kind of reach. Do you think that the United States could reach into China and block an American speaker or block a Canadian speaker, because they don't like those Canadians, right? Like, do you think that they could do that? Isn't that interesting, right? That China can block a Taiwanese speaker from a United States high school. So with that kind of fine-tuned plugging into the local economy, right? Like, Pompeo says it's not just high school and local leaders, municipal leaders. It's state leaders, governors, and all the way up to the VP. He doesn't talk about the VP here, but anybody who's been watching the news knows that it goes right up to the VP at least. Vice President Biden and President-elect Biden, right? Goodness me. We'll see on January 6th, I suppose. Here's Pompeo.
Your stakes. These are complex, difficult jobs.
Oops, sorry. He's speaking too fast. Sorry, I was trying to find the interesting part, right? So here we go. Normal.
The task to create jobs and opportunity in your state for your people and attract human capital investment that undergirds our prosperity. It's a tough job, and you get curveballs every day from all across the place. But don't lose sight of the competition from China that's already present in your state. Let's all rise to the occasion and protect our security, our economy, indeed all that we hold dear.
Well, that was not the clip that I was meant to show you. Okay, I'll show you two clips. The first one is not going to be the clip that I just set up and was wrong. This is the clip that he tells the governors a think tank in Beijing has already decided whether you're friendly or whatever. And then I'll show you the high school clip. Hold on.
Last year, a Chinese government-backed think tank in Beijing produced a report that assessed all 50 of America's governors on their attitudes towards China. They labeled each of you friendly, hardline, or ambiguous. I'll let you decide where you think you belong. Someone in China already has.
So that's kind of concerning, right? Somebody in China already has, and as I just showed, Nenshi says he doesn't know that he's on any list, but he is on a list. Somebody in China has decided where Nenshi lies, right? And well, we'll see how things work out, right? Very interesting stuff happening in Calgary. But here's the Secretary Pompeo actually talking about the high school infiltration. Here we go.
Phil went anyway. Last year, a high school in Chicago disinvited a Taiwanese representative to serve on a climate panel after Chinese pressure. You know, it's one thing to pressure the Secretary of State of the United States of America. It seems quite something else to go after a high school principal. It shows depth. It shows systematization. It shows intent. Chinese Communist Party officials, too, are cultivating relationships with county school board members and local politicians, often through what are known as sister cities programs. Look, this Chinese competition is something you all know. It sits in the back of your mind, but you have many duties.
All right, so interesting. The Chinese Communist Party targets Western leaders, targets state governors. If they're targeting state governors, do you not think that they're targeting the richest province in the country of Canada? Okay, so they're targeting everyone from state governors down to high school principals. Do you think that do you think that any of the politicians in Canada have escaped the interested eye of the CCP? Do you think that any of them? I was invited to more than one, right? And I don't know if they were associated with anything. I have no idea, right? I don't even know, other than doing the basic research. And Mr. Pompeo outlines in his speech as well the groups that are connected back to the CCP that operate in the West, that operate in the United States, the Confucius learning groups, et cetera, et cetera. He references that. But I mean, politicians in Canada will meet with anybody, right? And will they do their due diligence? How much? How much due diligence, right? We've all seen Trudeau fall down some stairs and get punched in the nose, right? Does he know to do due diligence before taking meetings with billionaire Chinese people? Oh, he doesn't. Oh, right. Yeah. I wonder how that works, right? The money laundering guy from BC met a couple of times with Justin Trudeau. Okay, anyway, regardless, the Epoch Times. And not that I don't use these guys very often, but I've seen them around and I've seen their ads and stuff, so I take everything with a grain of salt. But this is interesting to me, and this I think ties in with what Pompeo's saying. So grain of salt, everyone. Here we go. The Epoch Times says, Chinese regime targets Calgary mayor. Other officials for influence purposes leaked document. This was September 10th, 2020. Okay. Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi, a number of Calgary City officials, several academics, and a now former mayor of St. John's are all on the list of targets the Chinese officials hope to influence to further the communist regime's interests. The list, disclosed in a leaked government document recently obtained by the Epoch Times, reveals names spanning a wide range of sectors and countries in which the Chinese regime seeks to cultivate talent. The document was issued by Foreign Affairs Office of the Municipal Government of Dakin, a city in northeastern China. Dakin's Foreign Affairs Office states that in 2019, in the 2019 document that it would start an initiative called the 100 Overseas Talent Cultivation Plan. It's a program found in many other local governments in China, as well as within the central government. A 2019 report by the U.S. China Economic and Security Review Commission listed several national-level talent programs that have recruited or repatriated tens of thousands of individuals to China, and stated that hundreds of such programs exist at the local level as well. In the leaked document, although the office doesn't explain how it would carry out its plan, nor the plan's specific goals, it lists 129 overseas individuals it wished to recruit. The document contains only the first name of some of those individuals, but each entry states the person's current or former job positions, career fields, and contact information. The list consists of 19 people in Canada, and 13 of whom are based in Calgary. Besides Nenshi, the list includes a number of other senior officials, along with Derek Zaho, sorry if I've got that wrong. I probably got that wrong. Who at one point was in charge of the China Initiative at Calgary Economic Development, a not-for-profit corporation partly funded by the city and other government parties or partners. Other targets, so fully government funded. Yowza, right? Yowza. Anyway, other targets are academics, a University of Calgary senior administration official, and senior executives with a number of Calgary-based businesses. The city of Calgary is a sister city of Deakin, I probably got that wrong too, also an energy hub. A spokesperson for Nenshi told the Epoch Times that the mayor was not aware he was on any list. While Deakin has been one of Calgary's sister cities since 1985, Mayor Nenshi has had no personal contact with city officials. Adam Noble-Johnson, the mayor's communications strategist, said in an email. The document also lists officials from Atlantic provinces, included our former St. John's Mayor Dennis O'Keefe, as well as an official with Halifax Partnership, the city's economic development organization. The Epoch Times contacted Calgary Economic Development and the mayor's office in St. John's, but didn't hear back. The list has targets that span the globe, including people in the United States, New Zealand, United Kingdom, Pakistan, Spain, and the current mayor of the smallest city of Esbjerg in Denmark. The Epoch Times contacted the Esbjerg mayor, but received no reply. 2 former mayors of the Australian city of Perth were also included. According to China commentator and Epoch Times contributor Hang He, the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, dubs its city partnerships as citizen diplomacy. Hang says the Chinese organization in charge of promoting ties between Chinese and foreign cities, the Chinese People's Association for Friendship with Foreign Countries, CPAFFC, has senior party officials among its ranks and is a proxy of China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In this way, in addition to the official embassies and consulates, CCP foreign affairs agencies have added a quasi-diplomatic organization that isn't on the list of diplomatic envoys and isn't regulated by foreign governments, he says. According to Hang, the Friendship City can be co-opted to perform tasks that further the CCP's interests without being noticed. This includes United Front work, the CCP's term for efforts to influence people and organizations overseas to promote its agenda, Hang says. CCP influence, Scholar Clive Hamilton and Marquis Olberg, sorry if I got that wrong, write in their new book, Hidden Hand, that Chinese officials use sister city arrangements to build personal relationships. This could be weaponized when a city plans activities that go against CCP positions, such as deals with Taiwan or meetings with the Dalai Lama. The CCP uses a strategy dubbed as using the countryside to surround the cities, note Hamilton and Olberg. This strategy originated from the time before the CCP came to power in China in 1949, when the party retreated to the countryside and surrounded the cities in its fight against the rival nationalist party. The rival nationalist party. This slogan should not be understood only in the literal sense. The idea is to go to areas where the CCP's enemies are weak or not well represented, organize the population there, and then use them to encircle the enemy's strongholds, the book says. The connections with these local politicians can then be leveraged to pressure national governments. Yeah, yep, sure can. Interesting. Here is a freedom protest 10 hours ago with arrests being made by Nenshi's police. Pull them up. I saw another one where they pull somebody out of the crowd and arrest them, kind of over here. I thought this was that one, but evidently I'm wrong. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, they pull the guy right out of the crowd here, and yeah, slam him down here. So this is okay here. Here's Black Lives Matter in August. Thousands marching downtown Calgary as part of Black Lives Matter. You know, it just seems like one's okay, one's not. And this was in August. Wow. Right? Merry Christmas. Here's rail blockades. Can't arrest these guys, though. Rail blockades last February were allowed by police, costing the Canadian economy millions of dollars, but a young man skating on an outdoor rink resulted in his being physically assaulted and arrested. Still not sure what his exact crime was because it wasn't specified by police. The police now specified resisting arrest after not identifying himself because they wanted to give him a ticket for something. But I wonder what the ticket was for. Not identifying himself? How dare you? Here's Randy Hillier, and he says, Andrew, a nurse in Ontario, wrote this powerful message to his MPP outlining the real situation in our hospitals during COVID-19. I encourage you to warn your MPP and Ford Nation that the longer they perpetuate this lie, the harder the consequences will be. And this is an email. And here is, people are saying anybody could write this letter. They don't have to be knowledgeable, etc. When Reddit used to be a good website back in the day, gather around, children, I'll tell you of the free internet. They used to have AMAs, and it used to be celebrities would come on, and in the early days, it was just like people volunteering their time, and then Reddit hired somebody to manage the AMAs. But the AMAs would Ask Me Anythings would verify, but the person wouldn't have to post their proof publicly, right? Like it wouldn't have to be like, hi, I'm Andrew, John Doe, and I work at this hospital, like the Guelph Hospital, and this is what I think. Because usually, if you identify yourself like that way in public, when you're not a public figure, you're going to get all of the Twitter bots coming after you. And regardless of Twitter bots, the real life Twitter bots, the Antifa people will come after you too, right? There's or whatever incarnation of Antifa, the pro-maskers, the pro-vacciners, whatever you want to call them, the people who want to shame anybody who goes against their narrative will come after you. So the criticisms I've heard on this letter is anybody could have written this, but in conjunction with the other evidence, in conjunction with the videos of the empty hospitals and the other people saying that, the numbers. I mean, Guelph Hospital has 6 people in the hospital last I checked, which was yesterday. 6 people in the hospital, and we're in red lockdown. Merry Christmas, everyone. Don't visit your family because 6 people have the flu. Wild, right? But, it's just crazy. Anyway, so here's a nurse. I'm assuming that there's some kind of verification that this person is a real person, but I don't know for sure. So take it with a grain of salt. Do take everything with a grain of salt. The world is a crazy place full of lies and deceit. So come to your own conclusion based on the best knowledge you can find. But here's a letter that Randy Hillier says is believable. And so I believe it. Here we go. Peter, I'm sure you and Jane are great people. We're all just cogs in the machine. But let me tell you this, whatever you guys are hearing from public health, the Ontario Hospitals Association, etc., it's all about saving face. These people are demanding lockdowns is utterly unconscionable. Evil, frankly. The entire COVID hospital crisis is manufactured. It's an unintended or intended consequence of the policies created to manage the pandemic. Hospitals were busier in 2018 when all-cause mortality was higher for that flu season than it is so far during this supposedly deadly pandemic. We are short-staffed because of all the crazy unwarranted stringencies and restrictions. Thank God it's not actually that busy in the hospital. Bottlenecks, have always occurred in places like Brampton, old, inadequate infrastructure for a baseline unhealthy population. I ask myself this question. I've been working full-time in a mid-sized hospital throughout the pandemic, right next door to the supposedly epicenter of the COVID-19 crisis in the outskirts of the largest metropolitan area in Canada. Yet the crisis always seems to be elsewhere. Everyone can tell me somewhere it's really bad. But since the beginning of this pandemic, I've been skeptical of these claims. Healthcare workers often use hyperbolic language to describe hospital scenes like war zone. We got slammed, they say. Nurses and doctors talk like this since time immemorial. It is not literal. Doctors crying on Instagram to the contrary notwithstanding. So I urge you guys to stay on the right side of history, because when the reckoning comes, a great shame will be cast on all of you that ushered in this era of fear, terror, and tyranny for no legitimate reason. Okay, and again, grain of salt, but in conjunction with other evidence, it bears listening to, right? Here's different language, the same timeline. So the October 14th document that was leaked, according to the document leaker, says they were leaked from the Canadian legislature, Canadian, high up cabinet meetings or whatever, gave a specific timeline. And I said at the beginning, I don't know, Not so believable. It's hard to plan out C, D, and E if they depend on B and C. But now I'm seeing B and C come into place, and D, E, and F are looking more likely. So it's kind of like, well, grain of salt. But be aware, this one's got different language. It says the New World Order Plan, and it's December 2020 to December 2021. It's a one-year plan, which when you start planning out further than a year, it gets dicey. You can't, like I said, if you've got D, E, and F, but they depend on B and C, then you could potentially run into problems with your plan, right? But this is in line or similar enough to bear mention to the other plan. So have a look through. I'm not going to go through it because it's just kind of the same. And speaking of that other leaked plan, here's the United Kingdom announcing new coronavirus variants spreading quickly. UK medical officer says they call it a mutant. I think Yes, the mutant strain. Johnson held an unscheduled meeting on Friday evening to discuss the latest evidence about the mutant strain with officials. He's refused to rule out the prospect of a third national lockdown for England. That did happen, and a bunch of people left. Londoners celebrated Christmas in 1940 in the middle of the Blitz. Now in 2020, it's cancelled because of a situation that has left hospital beds emptier than this time last year. Here's Boris Johnson talking about the Tier 4 regulations. So I'm telling you that lockdowns don't work. The data is telling you that lockdowns don't work. The data doesn't back up the actions that the leadership is taking, but that doesn't seem to matter. And here's Boris Johnson doing exactly the same thing in lockstep with the rest of the world, locking everybody down for Christmas. I haven't heard of like Egypt locking everybody down or like the Middle Eastern countries. Is Saudi Arabia locked down right now? Is Wuhan locked down right now? Why is it just like the West and like some states? Why is it Canada and the United Kingdom and Australia and some states, not all states, because South Dakota's totally fine, Florida's totally fine. Why is that? See the earlier report on China. Okay, here's Boris Johnson.
If this is not possible, for example, in the construction and manufacturing sectors, people should not enter or leave Tier 4 areas, and Tier 4 residents must not stay overnight away from home. Individuals can only meet one person from another household in an outdoor public space. Unlike the November national restrictions, communal worship can continue to take place in Tier 4 areas, and these measures will take effect from tomorrow morning. Introduce new restrictions in...
So, in light of those restrictions, the station Londoners fleeing from St. Pancras this evening following Tier 4 announcement. Here's what London train station looked like. If all of those people went to Boris Johnson's house and said, Mr. Johnson, the answer is no, we'd like to keep our houses and not slip into this post-communist heck hole, we'd really like that. We'd really like you to stop doing that. I don't know, man. On Twitter, there's a bunch of people who, and I'm sure it's click farms. Like, I can't imagine, is the population that far gone that they're begging for draconian lockdowns, even despite the fact that they don't work, they don't do anything, right? Like, what's the plan after you open up the economy after this lockdown? Let the virus spread a little bit and then lock down again? Like, the idiocy of this is absolutely astounding, and people begging for it. Oh my goodness, the schools are still open, so blah, 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 blah. Ridiculous. Global News is reporting a recent poll found that 65% of Canadians surveyed say they support a lockdown in their province during Christmas and New Year's to tackle the pandemic. Yeah, because it works so well over Easter. Here's almost 8,000 people on Twitter saying 60% say no. Nope, don't support the lockdown. Absolutely not. 37% say yes. 2% say I don't know. 37% say yes. I guess that's all you need. Welcome to Canada. Welcome to Canada, right? Here's Tam, Canada's chief public health officer, is calling for tougher COVID-19 restrictions to be imposed immediately in many parts of the country as new case numbers continue to rise. We live in a medical police state, period. Yes. And here it is. Manitoba has hardest lockdown in Canada. Since then, they've increased deaths significantly, up second place in deaths per 100,000. So obviously lockdowns work. Seems the goal is to wreck lives and kill the elderly. Very successful program then. Yeah, and here's the, as of December 9th, right? The lockdowns, and you can see the deaths per 100 people on the far right. Quebec has the highest with 90, and then Manitoba is second with 34 deaths per 100 people. Ontario's got 28, Alberta 16, BC 12, Nova Scotia 7, Saskatchewan 6.5. and New Brunswick and I can't see doesn't matter. Newfoundland have 0.8, less than 1 for New Brunswick and Newfoundland. Nova Scotia is 7. Okay, so very interesting stuff, right? Here's a doctor that says we don't have a pandemic of people falling over dead. We have a pandemic of false positives. Here we go.
But what I'm here to tell you is that we're basing all of these lockdowns, these restrictions, these mandates on faulty testing. In other words, we don't have a pandemic of people falling over dead. What we have is a pandemic of false positives.
Yeah, he spends a minute and a half literally going through his credentials and why he deserves to be here, and why his wife told him that he shouldn't be here because the city council have already made up their minds. See the first story, right? So have the city council already made up their mind? I don't know. This isn't Canadian. This is, I think it's a Florida city, but I'm not sure. Maybe not Florida, different city. The reason I thought Florida was because of the comparison for California and Florida here. Here's a comparison of California and Florida. For lockdowns, the black line is California with heavy lockdowns indicated on the black line, and I'll get to that. Florida is the orange line, and it's got the only intervention in orange at the beginning of the chart, and I'll tell you what it is right now. On September 24th, most restrictions removed, Fauci says, asking for trouble. The line is much lower and much less steep than the California line. It's much flatter, and it stayed under 280. So that's interesting. California is up around 430. On November 15th, they closed indoor dining. On November 19th, they had a statewide curfew. All of these interventions have resulted in increased cases. California closed outdoor dining on December 6th, and we're going to continue to lock us down, right? Welcome to communism. Welcome to communism. Yay. Here's a freedom march in Saskatoon. And yeah, I mean, good job, everyone. Good job for getting out there. It must have been cold. And well done. Mark Friesen was there and marching with everyone. Good job, everybody. I mean, I feel like if you called business owners who had to be closed, and you got 1 or 2 cars per business owner, and you shut down a major street, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 cars. How many cars would it take? 400? How many could you get? How many could you get to surround City Hall? How many could you get to surround City Hall and then have a rally and just honk your horns for an hour or 2? I don't know. Like, is this the way to do this? Would the car protest be allowed, or would the police just start towing people? If they start towing people, how legal is that, right? I don't know. This is a protest, right? If you have a Black Lives Matter sign and a freedom sign, do they have to let you continue? Black Lives Matter, freedom of speech. Oh, I'm sorry. These two things conflict. I don't know what to do. Okay. This paper is the most pessimistic estimate, meaning the worst estimate, of the rate of transmission from pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic cases. It shows they accounted for 6% of the transmission, not 1/3. And this is in UK. And this is a CDC reference, so Center for Disease Control. And there is no evidence of true asymptomatic transmission as we published today. So I've talked about asymptomatic transmission before. This is lockdownskeptics.org. I know a lot of people maybe don't like alternate news sites, but often like these guys are using CDC data to come to their conclusions. And I largely agree, so it's very interesting. Here's Gil Nimini, and he's the doctor, and he was the one who silenced his account. I thought he was shut off, but he was the one who turned his account private. So he says, emergency physician, assistant clinical professor of U of T, and I clicked off the link. Sorry about that. He says, I can't help but shake my head tonight. This is the tweet that kicked off the I don't know, his phone exploding, so him turning off Twitter. Anyway, I just finished my shift at the COVID-19 assessment center at my hospital. I decided to walk through my ER on my way to the change room, empty. I shake my head about my colleagues who go on Twitter and TV ranting about how our ER is crazy. And then here he is again. COVID is very real and a serious problem, says the same doctor. We must adhere to public health measures in place. I'm concerned that lockdowns are resulting in economic devastation, but also resulting in few people accessing care in a timely manner. So he's saying that there are problems with the lockdown, right? Problems with the issues with the lockdown. So he's going on the Roy Green show, and I think he's going on today. Yeah, it's Sunday. A nationally known doctor will be joining me on air to support the fundamental premise of your original tweet. The doctor contacted me shortly after you shared your view. So I guess this guy's not going to be on the Roy Green show. Another nationally known doctor, I guess, who is unnamed. I don't know. Maybe I'm misunderstanding that tweet, but originally I thought it was Gill who was going to be on the Roy Green show, but I think it's maybe another doctor who's defending the same point. Here is the actual doctor, and he's got a piece in the Toronto Sun, and we'll go through it. I'm concerned that they're going to turn this Gill doctor into a controlled opposition. He's already saying that people should be wearing masks and socially distancing and no birthday parties and stuff, but they shouldn't be locked down. He's softening or clarifying a position that is a little bit different than what his initial tweet teased. Okay, here we go. As jurisdictions across the country ponder tighter restrictions on an ER doctor in the Greater Toronto Area is stepping forward to call for a more balanced approach. The main message I want to get across is I want people to adhere to public health measures and try to do their part, but locking people up is not the answer, says Dr. Gil Niemny, who works as an emergency physician in York Region, in an interview with The Sun. Watching the conversation around COVID-19 unfold, Niemny feels like there's only one voice being heard, the pro-lockdown perspective, when really what's needed is a more open discourse. When I see other physicians calling for complete lockdowns and further restrictions, even though we've had pretty heavy-handed restrictions for the last 4 weeks or so with no change and even worsening numbers, you always have to think, what are we doing and is this the right approach, says Niemny, who is also an assistant clinical professor at the University of Toronto. I scroll down. The sad tragedy in all of this is when the government tells people to lock down, unfortunately that translates into people not seeking care for things they should. You see a lot of late presentation in things that should have been dealt with weeks earlier. Those are the concerning issues, the ER doctor says. There has to be some middle ground here. He says things at least aren't as bad as during the first wave when the emergency rooms were extremely quiet. It's not as bad now because more people are understanding that the implications and they're unlikely to get COVID going into the hospital. What Niemny would like to see is an approach that focuses on actual trouble spots. The issues here is protecting the vulnerable populations, the elderly in long-term care facilities, people in retirement homes, people with bad comorbidities who would be susceptible to serious outcomes. These are the areas where we should be focusing our efforts. If the issue is about preserving hospital capacity, then we should be working on ways to increase capacity instead of locking people up, Niemny adds. I scroll down. As community spread of COVID-19 continues throughout Canada, some voices are urging for the closure of schools, although government and public health officials have stressed the virus does not appear to be spreading within the classroom. When people start calling for school closures, I can't tell you how detrimental that is to the overall mental health and well-being of our children, Niemny says. Show me evidence where COVID is rampant in schools and the kids are bringing it home. A balanced approach seems to be a prudent path forward, with more and more medical professionals stepping forward to voice their support for it. Yet, for that to happen, the politicians will need to welcome more diverse voices to the table. So far, they've surrounded themselves with medical advisors who have a one-track mind fixated on the ever stricter lockdowns. It's not an all-or-nothing approach, Niemny says. I believe in public health measures. I think we should be wearing masks and doing distancing. He says having group gatherings like weddings and birthday parties are off the table for the time being, but locking down people and sending people into financial ruin and worsening mental health issues isn't really the right answer. Here's the Justice Center and their think tank out of Calgary. Fewer Canadians dying since COVID-19, but no modeling for lockdown harms. Fewer Canadians are dying since the arrival of COVID-19 in Canada. That's the finding of a new legal analysis of lockdown measures titled Flying Blind based on government data and statistics. In spite of politicians repeatedly warning us during the previous 9 months that the virus is an unusually deadly killer, deaths in Canada actually declined from 190,000 to 187,000 in the first 8 months of 2020, in spite of Canada's larger population in 2020. Even more interesting is the decline by 10,295 deaths attributed to cancer, heart disease, lung disease, stroke, pneumonia, and influenza in the first 8 months of 2020, as 8,795 deaths with COVID-19 were recorded from January to August. There were 10,295 fewer deaths ascribed to these 6 illnesses compared to the first 8 months of 2019. Deaths with, right? Not deaths of. Anyway, Canada's federal and provincial governments are required by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms to consider carefully the harms as well as the benefits of any law or policy that violates our freedoms to move, travel, assemble, associate, and worship. While governments have created numerous models of virus infections and fatalities, they have failed or refused to produce models or projections regarding lockdown harms from canceled surgeries, delayed MRIs and CT scans, suicides, and drug overdoses. Flying Blind delves into these harms. So looking at the data we've got, the government refuses to compare apples to apples, and they have no interest in finding out why the approximate number of deaths has been reduced from cancer, heart disease, lung disease, stroke, pneumonia, and influenza, and all of those now appear to be with COVID, right? And that's very important. Here's a very interesting thing. As of Friday afternoon, this is 11 hours ago, so today's Sunday, CDC government had already learned 3,150 people who'd received the vaccine had already been unable to perform normal daily activities, unable to work, or require care from a doctor or healthcare professional. That figure supposedly represented about 1.5 of the 215,000 vaccine recipients. Not really, though. Vaccinations increased exponentially last week. On Friday alone, 127,000 people were vaccinated. Unless people had and reported adverse events immediately, the denominator is far lower than 215,000. The numerator will have a lag too, but the other way. If the lag is 1 day, almost 4% of the first 88,000 recipients have had a serious adverse event after the first shot of the Pfizer vaccine. Remember, the Moderna vaccine is worse and the second shot is much worse. Also note, hospitalizations or physician's care are included here, but not broken out separately. And she did the math wrong, and he corrects it here. He says, correction, per the Wall Street Journal, the chart is in fact cumulative, not daily. So as of Friday, 3,150 people had reported events out of 112,000 registered on the system, a rate of 2.8, but the number will rise. Okay, but it's not gonna rise in the same way. He thought it was gonna rise here. He thought it wasn't a cumulative. He thought it was a daily number. He thought that was the daily. Okay, so that's much higher if it was daily, but it's cumulative. Still high at 2%, almost 3%. Anyway, very interesting, right? Here's another one. Chicago area hospital to resume vaccinations after 4 workers experienced adverse reactions. My goodness, who's rolling up their sleeve for this? Getting out of the vaccine area and all of the COVID stuff, and I guess I'm kind of long. I'm right on time. Okay. I don't know what Jason Kenney's game is. He's locking Alberta down. I wonder if he's on a Chinese list, just like all the other ones, eh? But he says, we always predicted the federal government would massively hike their carbon tax, even when they said they wouldn't. This was proven true as they announced a 467% hike, which means 40 cents a litre at the gas pumps and $800 a year in home heating. That's why we're fighting this punitive tax in court. Yeah, yep. The number of Canadian restaurants closures since March has reached a staggering 10,000. Restaurants.ca launched a new campaign called Picture Life Without Restaurants in support of the food service industry. I wonder why they're not launching charter challenge lawsuits against people for not being able to open their businesses. I wonder what their bottom line looks like. Canada's at war. This is from 2018, talking about how the use of different tactics is having the same effect as a war. He says, it's a war. It's a different kind of war. Very interesting stuff, right? Considering all of the stuff going on in the world. This was a little bit of good news, I guess. I can't remember the country. Hold on. It was in the URL. Poland's justice minister announced online freedom of speech bill. The idea is to allow citizens to give internet users the right to sue social media companies if they censor your post or your speech or anything like that. So that's an interesting idea, right? That could solve things pretty quick. Very interesting. I wonder if they could set high fines for social media that silences speech that would be reasonably acceptable under, I don't know, certain free speech tenets, right? I don't know. Very interesting situation we're all in, though. Very, very, very interesting situation. It seems like a vice. Seems like they're boiling the frog, right? And anybody refusing to be boiled is getting out of Dodge. And look for this to come here, right? We've been following pretty closely. We were watching videos of Australians being arrested for not wearing their face masks out in public, and now we're seeing pictures of Canadian teenagers and Canadian teenagers being accosted by Calgary police. And then when somebody steps in to say, hey, leave the kids alone, they're playing hockey, eh? They get threatened with a taser and assaulted by police, right? And what crime did he commit, right? How dare he involve himself when the police are interrogating some children? How dare he? Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful day. Oh, did you like the decorations? My daughter drew or colored this one. She wasn't quite done, but she said, if you need a tree, Daddy, we'll put it up right now. And I said, let's do it. And the poinsettia, of course. Okay. Thanks for watching, everyone.